Hello, everyone. Today, I'd like to talk about this person. If you know this intro melody, you know exactly who I'm talking about. If not, it's Sonny Rollins. Now, I hate to do these types of videos because it's essentially a retrospective a farewell video. Sonny Rollins, I found out yesterday that he passed earlier this week, and he's one of the artists for me that was really under the radar for a while. And I just really want to talk about him and appreciate the work he's done and how he's kind of influenced me into the jazz genre and so forth. So, anyway, Sonny Rollins is unique. He's a guy that I got into from essentially listening to other people. I never really knew about him or heard about him, especially when I started developing my knowledge and listening into jazz, especially the bebop and hard bop era. Sonny Rollins was not in my radar at all. I got into Miles Davis, John Coltrane, like the heavy hitters. And funny, I got into Sonny Rollins through Thelonious Monk. At that time, as a kid, starting to get into this type of music, Thelonious Monk was one of my favorite pianists already. Blue Monk really is the one that got me into Thelonious Monk, and Round Midnight is the jazz staple, right? And there's a lot of other things with Thelonious Monk, but I love the his piano playing. Anyway, with Thelonious Monk, Miles Davis, John Coltrane, maybe a few other artists from those two eras. I found out about Sonny Rollins through a used CD shop. And back then, this particular used place, well, they sold new CDs as well, but it's mainly used. And what I liked about this place was that the person who either owned the shop or curated the CDs, the used CDs, I'm pretty sure this person was more into like classic rock, that kind of thing. Classic rock or top 40 rock, alternative rock. You could tell that whole store, majority, I'd say 50% were in those categories. And not only that, the CDs that they had were priced pretty high in a sense. They're almost like new CDs, like just like a few bucks off. And I'm a person like, if it's just a few bucks off, just buy new. But anyway, so this place had a lot of those CDs, and they would have a small section, jazz section, and it would be primarily like popular at the time was smooth jazz, but it's a small section in the sense it had everything, all kinds of subgenres of jazz. And from there, I always look for like either some popular smooth jazz artists or artists like Miles Davis, Thelonious Monk. And one album I picked out was the album Thelonious Monk and Sonny Rollins. That was the first album that I actually bought of Thelonious Monk. I knew Thelonious Monk from the library, so Blue Monk, so forth. So I listened to all that, but my first Thelonious Monk album was the Thelonious Monk and Sonny Rollins album. And I saw that, and what I love about this place is that the guy or female, I'm most likely a guy because everyone I saw in there at the counter were men. But this person, whoever curated and priced out, specialized on the classic rock and so forth. Jazz was like super cheap, at that time. So I think pretty much if it wasn't a really popular smooth jazz artist or something like that, everything would be like $5 or $6 or maybe even less if they're trying to clearance some inventory. So they had this Thelonious Monk and Sonny Rollins. When I picked this album up, I didn't really care about the Sonny Rollins part of it. I saw Thelonious Monk. I'm like, I gotta get this. It was the only Thelonious Monk there, and I think it was on sale too, or at least priced under $5. It was one of, I still needed to, like, it took me a couple weeks. I was kind of hoping no one picked it up. I had to save up money for it, and I finally got it. I took it home. Pretty good. I when I first listened to it, I thought it was just maybe both, Thelonious Monk and Sonny Rollins. But technically speaking, that album is really a Thelonious Monk album. Everything is Thelonious Monk. I think Sonny Rollins might have been featured on a few of the tracks, but not all of them. So really, that was really a Thelonious Monk album. But it didn't matter. That was my first introduction into Sonny Rollins. And I think that's the album that had the Jerome Kern song. The name of it slipped off my mind, but right now. But that's how I got into Sonny Rollins, so that name is noticeable. And I think I picked it up later on, Sonny Rollins, but mainly as a feature. Like, he would be on some other albums, like like a Thelonious Monk, that type of thing, and you'd see Sonny Rollins as the saxophone player. So it wasn't until I went to the library, and they actually had an album of his. It was the Compact Jazz series, and it's called Sonny Rollins and Friends. And I picked that up mainly because I had the Thelonious Monk Sonny Rollins album, but I wasn't as interested. But I knew Compact Jazz. Compact Jazz is a series. I think it's by Verve, the record label, that does like basically samplers of famous jazz artists as well as famous jazz genres, and that's one of the kind of my intro into the hard bop, bebop eras was through Compact Jazz, as well as some big band stuff. But I think it was a popular series at the time, and all the libraries carried it. I guess they were cheap. The sampler series were cheaper, so it was easy to procure. And I've listened to a few from the Compact Jazz. One of my favorites was that was kind of my intro into Gene Krupa. I love that Compact Jazz album. So I knew you couldn't do no wrong if it's on Compact Jazz. So I borrowed that from the library, Sonny Rollins and Friends. It was pleasingly good, I admit. Now, there's a lot of guest artists on there, or maybe he was a guest on them. I'm not exactly sure, but the entire album was very pleasing, very soothing. His style is very unique in that retrospect. So that's how I really got into Sonny Rollins, these two. My first own album was the Thelonious Monk, Sonny Rollins, and then listening to the Compact Jazz. I eventually was able to get Sonny Rollins and Friends, the actual CD, but my first intro of that particular album was through the library. Now, let's say, I think a year or so later, that same CD shop had an album of Sonny Rollins that I noticed, and I decided to buy it, whatever it was. I think whatever full price it was. I didn't wait for it on sale or anything. And it was that intro song you heard. It's from this album, Colossus, right? Saxophone Colossus, actually. But so I picked this up, not knowing what to expect. Outside of, I know it's going to be pretty good. From my experience so far with Sonny Rollins, took this home, played it. The very first song you heard, St. Thomas, just blew my mind. Just blew my mind. And then from there, the whole album was fantastic. The bookends especially. So St. Thomas is the first song on here. And then Blue 7 was the end, the bookends of the album. Man, fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. Blue 7 is something you got to kind of sit down and just let it flow. And you'll be amazed. And actually, one of my favorite songs on here is the Mac the Knife kind of interpretation. So it's actually called Moritat. Now, I love Mac the Knife is my favorite Bobby Darin song. So, and I love the melody, and I was very impressed when I heard this version on here. So, after listening to this album, it might not have been the same day, but every time I would play this, and it would have been often, especially when I first got it, I would put it on repeat, the whole CD on repeat, on repeat. And sometimes I would do it on random, so it wouldn't be the same. But for an album like this that only had 5 or 6, 1, 2, 3, 5. So really 5 songs. Random doesn't really do you any good. So I basically just repeat the whole CD multiple times every time I listen to it. And I still do that when I picked this album up recently after, finding out about Sonny Rollins' passing. I played this album multiple times. Love it. You can't go wrong with Sonny Rollins. Now, since then I've been able to pick up a few more albums, mainly samplers, different types of samplers. One album I do have that's not a sampler that I actually like too, play a lot. It's not at this location. It's a live album. I think it's called Live at the Village Vanguard or the Village Gate, one or the other. I forgot which one, but that it's a different perspective. He's playing live. Everything I've heard from Sonny Rollins is pretty much studio, and that is very good, very good. So highly recommend it. Really, I'm pretty sure anything Sonny Rollins puts out is fantastic. So, having said all that and kind of learning of his passing, I look back and to this day, since my first intro into Sonny Rollins up to now, and kind of reading about other people's comments about Sonny Rollins, the ones that are in the know, that know the jazz realm well, especially that era, I didn't realize how impactful and influential Sonny Rollins was. I did not know. For me, up to his passing, I always thought he was more of a sideman / session musician. And not in a bad way. I always thought he was more like kind of a guest artist, like a feature. When I mention a feature, that's basically what it is, a guest artist for other artists, but those other artists happen to be Thelonious Monk, like a John Coltrane. I mean, you're talking about top of the top, right? Especially in that era. If you're always a guest artist for people like those artists, you got to be good, right? You can't just take anyone off the street or just mediocre and then play on a Thelonious Monk album. That's just not. It's not. You can't. You just can't. So I always knew he was like an elite saxophonist, but that's basically what I always thought of him. Just an elite saxophonist that didn't really break apart from like the monsters of the day, John Coltrane or something like that. So that's how I always felt until reading about him, and I didn't realize how impactful, how influential, how important he was for jazz. I mean, he influenced so many people. It's just, I did not know at all. And to me, knowing this now and kind of looking back at how I thought Sonny Rollins was, not only everyone calls him one of the greatest, saxophonists. I think he played tenor. Saxophones of all time, most influential, one of the most influential in that regard. Having said all that, or read all about that, I still consider him like criminally underrated. And it's because of my impression of him until just recently makes me think he's really underrated. Because when you think about like the top jazz artists, especially just name some in that era of like bebop and hard bop, I don't, for sure, he wouldn't be in my top five. It wouldn't just come out at all. It wouldn't come out. I'm not sure he would be in my top 10 as well, just naming it. And then now we're talking about just jazz, the entire genre alone. So we're talking about from, big band jazz and stuff, instrumental jazz, all the way up till like today. You know, I probably would never mention Sonny Rollins in a top 20 if I had to just name it off the top of my head. And I'm pretty sure a lot of people, casual listeners like myself, would probably say the same thing. And that's why I kind of think how good his skills are and everything like that. He's still just criminally underrated up to this day. I think the likes of Miles Davis, John Coltrane, Horace Silver, Adderley, goes on and on. I think there's so many great artists, especially in that period of time, that it kind of, for me at least, overshadowed like Sonny Rollins and his output from either from album standpoint and from songs, and then his musicianship with others. So very interesting. Not knowing the history and the impact that Sonny Rollins has done. So just wanted to give you my take on Sonny Rollins. I already loved him, just never thought he was well known, especially in the people who would know jazz music and that era of music. Just from a casual listener, I just did not know this guy was known to be that great and that impactful. And I still love him. You know what I'm saying? Regardless what I thought from before, I still loved him as the albums I had, all the music I'd listened to, and that tells you how damn good this guy is. So, farewell, Sonny Rollins. Rest in peace. Man, you're good. All right, that's all I've got to say. If you have any comments or anything like that, if you know Sonny Rollins personally or his music or anything more deep, in depth, and maybe that era, let me know. I do know he did make music all the way through the 2000s. Last one I remember was kind of like a dedication to the September 11th attacks. He might have done some other collaborations and things like that down the road. But for me, it's always been Sonny Rollins. I always think of him with the Miles Davis, the John Coltrane, that era, the bebop, hard bop eras. And he's just awesome. Anyway, thanks. Appreciate it. Bye.